Hey folks, how's it going this afternoon? Happy Tuesday to all of you. If you just happen to be scrolling through LinkedIn right now and I've popped up in your feed, I'm Angelique Rewers, CEO and founder of Bold House, where we help experts to win and keep corporate clients. But that's actually not what we're going to be talking about today. I wanted to take some time this week to talk about the topic of scaling. And how do you scale a consulting business, a coaching business, a professional services business? Specifically, how do you scale your offerings? How do you do that effectively? So, we're not going to be talking about how do you build your support team, your back end support team, or the systems or infrastructures in your business, which is all very important. And there are plenty of experts out there who can help you do those things. What I really want to dial into today with you is how do you scale the profit center side of your business? Because there's a lot of focus out there on the cost center side of your business, and we're going to get more into the difference between those two things, but they're pretty obvious what they are. And we really want to help you be able to scale that profit side of your business, the profit centers in your business when you're that consultant, when you're that expert service provider, when you're that leadership or executive coach, or somewhere else in that expert field. Maybe you're an author, maybe you're a speaker. So we're going to be diving in to all of that right away. We have a lot to cover. So this is going to be a little bit longer than some of the LinkedIn lives that I do. So, pull up a chair, get a notebook, grab your tea. I'm sort of regretting a little bit right as I hit that live button that I did not take the time to eat lunch before hopping on. So I'm hoping that I don't have my stomach growling all the way through, but I'm going to make sure I eat a big lunch right after this. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about this idea of scaling. And I think one of the things, a friend of mine, a professional friend of mine, just in the last week or two, left her job and is making the decision as to whether or not she's going to start her own expert based business. And one of the things that I said to her when we talked yesterday was, there's a really interesting thing that happens when you're a self employed expert or a small business owner where you can set your goal to, let's say, replace the salary that you were making in your job. That is often sometimes the first stake that people plant in the ground when they're starting their own thing. If I could do it all over again, that's the one thing I would do differently. I would not try to focus on growing my business to that corporate salary. I would have planted that first stake much farther ahead because it would have opened up my mindset and my strategic thinking to think bigger from the get go. And the reason that that is so important is because, interestingly enough, it can actually be really miserable to have a coaching or consulting or services based business that's making about $200,000 a year if you actually haven't built up the team or the people or the systems or the structures that you need around you. And it can actually be one of the most uncomfortable places to be. In fact, one of the things we love to do here at Bold House is, take someone who's maybe at 100,000, 150,000, 200,000 and really get them to the $500,000 mark or above, because life is a lot easier there. It's actually less of a grind when you're at the multi six figure level than sometimes where you're working. Maybe you're killing yourself at 125,000 a year, but when you get to 500, 600,000, you're like, wow, the air is a lot smoother up here at this next level. There's another kind of crunch point that we see right below the seven figure mark as well. So, it's really important to make sure that you understand how to scale and to also recognize that sometimes those financial numbers that are smaller, you're actually working much more to earn those things. In fact, I typically find that if you're selling, $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 client engagements versus $100,000 engagements, you're going to work a lot harder even on the engagements themselves. So we want to help you build some of that scale into the business. So that's what we're going to get into today. And we're going to dive right in. And I'm just going to pop this banner off here for just a second. You guys all know who I am. It says it right above, I'm sure. So again, if you just joined us, I'm Angelique Ruhr, CEO and founder of Bold House. And let's go ahead and get into how are you going to scale your business? And more importantly, how are you going to scale your offerings? That's really the focus today. So let's start with this premise. There are only that's it, just two ways to scale your offerings if you're a consultant, if you're a coach, if you're a service provider. And so what are those two ways? Well, the first way to scale is through the path of productization, by productizing your expertise, by productizing your knowledge. That's really path number one. Path number two is people. So you can scale by adding people, and those people can have your expertise, a brand of your expertise, variations of your expertise, or sort of specialties that fit in with your expertise, right? But that's it. You've got productization and you've got people. And everything fits into those two paths or those two lanes. Now, what's really interesting is actually if you do both, sort of lane A, the productization, and lane B, the people, there's actually a point in time where those two things can intersect and you can have a combination of scale through the people plus the productization. And I'm going to talk about what that looks like as well. So let's talk just for a second here about the productization side of things and talk through some of the big buckets of productization that you've probably seen, you've probably thought about. So I'm just going to run through 7 of them. They're really the 7 most common, and almost every other thing fits into one of these 7 buckets when it comes to how to productize your consulting, your services, or your coaching. Into what does that look like from a productization? It's going to fit into one of these 7 buckets, or again, an offshoot of one of these things. So the first way you can productize is actually through a book. That's certainly the lowest cost in terms of what you're going to sell, right? The cost of what a customer is going to invest in if they buy one of your books, but it can be done in an amazing ways. Our senior faculty of corporate training programs here at Bold House, her name is Tara Powers. She's also the CEO and founder of Powers Resource Center. And Tara was asked by the publishing company Wiley, I'm sure a lot of you guys know Wiley, to write a book for one of their dummy series. You know, those yellow and blue books that are like, how do you Microsoft Word for Dummies and Microsoft Excel for Dummies. Well, they asked Tara to write a book called Virtual Teams for Dummies. Interestingly enough, they asked her to do that prior to the pandemic. And as you can imagine, when the pandemic set in, her book was flying off the shelves. But companies, big companies, I can't tell you who because I wouldn't be allowed to do that, but big companies bought tons of her books to share with their leaders who were all of a sudden working with teams in virtual environments. So here you have a book, Virtual Teams for Dummies, published by Wiley. It's published all over the world in many different languages. And that was a way to productize her knowledge and her information and get that inside of major corporations. And as you can imagine, that ended up leading to all sorts of other amazing opportunities. So, yeah, anybody can write a book, but if you really think about what it is and who that decision maker is and the organizations that you want to get inside of, the book that you write might look very different. If you're thinking about, I really want to productize my knowledge and use it as a way to get my consulting services or get my coaching services or my other professional services in front of decision makers, what is that going to look like? But books are definitely the first way to productize. The second way to productize is through proprietary templates and toolkits. And I don't mean training, although we're going to talk about training next. But, when you look at, there's a number of companies out there that sell proprietary toolkits that you can actually buy. The first time I ever bought a toolkit was actually through the International Association of Business Communicators. And I was leading internal corporate communications for a Fortune 100 company. And we were looking at improving the way that we did employee communications. So in fact, I bought an employee communications toolkit right through the International Association of Business Communicators, but the toolkit was actually created by a solo expert, a guy by the name of Ned. And he had created this amazing toolkit. It was about $500 for me to purchase that. Back in the day, it was a hard copy toolkit because this was really, 20 years ago. Now, of course, most of these toolkits are electronic. We have a toolkit on the Bold House website under our offerings. It's called the Discovery Phase Toolkit. And essentially, I took all of the, templates and resources that we've ever used for our own corporate clients and our own small business owner clients from a discovery perspective. We put those into the Discovery Phase Toolkit, and that's available for purchase. It's not a training, it's literally an off the shelf grouping of templates and toolkits that saves consultants and coaches tons of time. So that's an example of productizing my knowledge of how do you do a Discovery Phase Toolkit. But instead of yet another training course, it's a look, here are the tools, here are the templates, and you can use those. So that's number 2 for how to productize your expertise. Number 3 is what I just foreshadowed a second ago, which would be on-demand training courses, right? So on-demand learning programs through LMS systems where you record, whether it's just audio with slides or document sharing, or whether it's you going into a studio and filming training videos or a combination thereof, online, on demand, training programs that are pre-done, don't require you to be there, is yet another example of how you can productize and scale your services. But I'm going to come back to that a bit more detail in a second. Option number 4 to productize your consulting, coaching, or services business is to create licensed training content, licensed content. You could license toolkits as well, but a lot of times people think of this in terms of licensed training content. And, given that there's $370 billion that is spent by companies all over the world training their employees, it's a huge, huge market. And that doesn't even count the online training space. That's not the companies paying for it. It's individuals signing up and paying for their training as well, right? So you've got amazing opportunities with licensing these days. A great example of it on a smaller scale is something that we created. If you just want to kind of look at it as like, how did they do this? Our website, workshopsunday.com, and that's as in ice cream Sunday, not the day of the week. So workshop and then Sunday, as they were eating lots of ice cream. So if you go to workshopsunday.com, you can actually see how we partnered up with Tara. Again, she's our head of corporate training programs on our faculty here at Bold House. And what did we do? Well, we took 6 of her corporate training courses that she sells to the Fortune 500 and mid-market companies, and we allowed those to be white labeled so that coaches and consultants can actually just come buy those trainings and then put their logo on them and go sell them to their corporate clients, to their organizational clients. It's an example of how you can license content. So sometimes you might be licensing your content to hundreds or thousands or tens of thousands of employees or to companies for use with hundreds, thousands, or tens of thousands of their employees inside their organizations. Or you might be licensing your content to individuals who then can take your content and then resell that as workshops or seminars or employee training programs or whatever the case may be. So licensing is yet another way to productize your expertise. So just to recap where we are: number 1, books; number 2, proprietary templates and toolkits; number 3, on-demand learning courses, training programs; number 4, licensing that training content to others to reuse. Number 5, and this is really one that can't be ignored today, are mobile apps and SaaS tools. SaaS tools being those cloud-based subscription tools that are out there, right? You think about things like Asana, you think about things like Monday, ManyChat, right? All of these online tools, but there are also amazing apps that are out there. In fact, there are over 200,000 employee wellness apps that are available today, which is making corporate decision makers go a little bit nuts trying to sort through how do they know which of those is the best. But apps are definitely something you're going to look at $30, $40, $50,000 to develop a really robust app. But it's yet another way that you can take your knowledge, you can take your expertise, and you can package it up as a product. Number 6 are branded physical materials. And this is sort of, it has a little bit pulled in from training and a little bit pulled in from toolkits and templates. But a great example to look at, there used to be a company called inspireyourpeople.com, but that actually just recently in the last year got purchased by another company called Successories. And some of you, when you think of the brand Successories, you might initially conjure up those, motivational posters that companies sometimes, put up in their offices. Teamwork, we can do it. Successories has a lot of trophies and employee gifts and sort of, those kind of like crystal awards for 5 years of service and things like that you can put on your desk. But a guy by the name of Sam Parker created Inspire Your People, and he developed programs called Smile and Move, Lead Simply, 212, the extra degree. And he created these concepts to really motivate and engage employees. And he did a phenomenal job of productizing them with mugs and posters and pens and sort of leadership tip cards, pocket cards that they could carry around. At one point, there were keynote talks that went with each of these. But instead of just having a keynote to deliver to leaders, there were these entire product kits that could be rolled out across entire organizations with key quotes on them, with tips and reminders, with the logo of the keynote title, like 212, the extra degree, which that entire concept was about getting just 1 degree of extra effort out of your people. And so the idea there is like physical products, really taking that thing. So if you have a training program that your clients just absolutely love, it has a clever name to it, it gets their employees all fired up, people start actually talking in that lingo. We have a couple of clients who've said to me in private strategy days, we'll have, employees come up to us when they see us, at the next training, and they'll say, they'll give us one of our quotes right back to us. That's the kind of thing that can actually be turned into physical products like notepads and pens and mugs and posters and tip cards that can actually be sold to your clients. So it's yet another way to productize your expertise. And if you head to Successories website, if you look under the category of fun motivation on their website, you'll see things like Lead Simply, Smile and Move, 212, the extra degree, if you just want to kind of understand in practical terms what that looks like. And then number 7 in terms of productization of your expertise is research and data. And this is one of the things where when folks are really over about 500,000 in revenue and they're looking to go over 7 figures in their business, we'll typically roll up our sleeves with them and really conceptualize a research study that they can conduct. Now, obviously, we're not suggesting that our clients are the ones on the phone or, writing research questions. There's lots of companies out there that can do that, but it's amazing when you take your expertise and you really start gathering data and you start gathering research, and you then can take that and actually sell that research and that data as part of what you're doing in the marketplace. And it really productizes what you're doing. Think about companies like Gartner as an example. Think of Burson by Deloitte, and they just kind of recently went through another name shift there. But when you think about Burson, for example, you think about Gartner. Back in the day, there was the corporate executive board. Think about Edelman and their trust barometer. And there's layers to that research that are sold to their clients. So you think about it, it's around us all day, every day. But a lot of times as consultants, coaches, and service providers, you may not be thinking, oh, that's actually a way to productize my expertise. So 7 of them, right? So number 1, books. Number 2, proprietary templates and toolkits. Number 3, on-demand digital courses. Number 4, licensed training content. Number 5, mobile apps and SaaS software. Obviously, there's a little bit more expense to that to build those. Number 6, branded physical materials. And then number 7, research and data. Now, why haven't I gotten into some of the other sort of leverage factors like group coaching? I'm going to get to that, but that is not pure productization. That actually requires people too. So we're going to get into that. These 7 things, aside from the initial build of them, once they are built, they are infinitely scalable. A book can be sold, as many books as they can print, you can sell. If you have a learning management system, as many people as you can sell into an online training program, you can put into those programs. So these 7 things really pretty much are more or less the entire universe of productizations for experts. Something's going to fit into one of those 7 buckets, and they're infinitely scalable without needing people other than the initial build. Yes, you would need somebody who knows how to, do a mobile app. Yes, you might need somebody to build you an e-commerce site. So these things have a lot of appeal to them on the surface, because it's that whole concept of make money while you sleep. People can buy things even while you're on vacation, right? So that whole idea. But I want to talk about some of the pitfalls around these 7 things, because oftentimes they're a bright, shiny object. They sound amazing. Who doesn't want a toolkit that you're selling for $1,500 that people can invest in? But there's definitely some cons to doing these things. So let me share with you some of the traps around productizing. And that doesn't mean not to do it, but you have to kind of go in with your eyes wide open and understand. The first real trap that people get into with productizing their knowledge and their expertise is doing it way, way too early in their business, right? So if you're a coach or a consultant or a trainer or a speaker or a service provider, and you haven't built up a large enough book of business, and you haven't sold your programs where you feel like you can consistently take certain steps and know predictably you're going to be able to get in front of decision makers. You know how to frame conversations with decision makers. You've delivered, let's say, an in-person training workshop well over a dozen times, and you have worked out all the kinks in the content, and from pre and post surveys that people are really getting value out of the training, and you got rid of all of those sections of the training that really confused people. If you try to productize your knowledge too early in your business, before you have enough road experience to work out those kinks, to really see the look on people's faces when you've delivered your services to them, or your training to them, or your consulting to them, and you've figured out all of those sticking points, it is too soon in the business to create this productization. Productization should happen when you have proven solutions, proven to get in front of decision makers with the topic, proven to close sales, proven to create profitability, and most of all, proven to create an actual result with your clients. If you don't have proof, then it's too soon to be able to do the productization. It's very expensive. It's very time consuming to create these things. So to go through, let's say 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and whatever you think it's going to take, probably double or triple that amount of time, right? If that's a lesson that we can all just learn once and kind of move on from, everything takes longer than you think it's going to, and it costs more money than you think it's going to. So you don't want to take that time away from your business to go create something and find out you built the wrong ladder against the wrong wall. And not only that, but clients are saying, well, show me your case studies, show me your impact statements from, your statistics, the ROI that your clients got with X, Y, and Z. So don't do any of those things too early and too soon in your business. The second piece of that the sort of hand-in-hand trap that comes with is, if you do this too soon in your business and you're not actually able to outsource the majority of the creation of it, what will happen is it will take over your entire schedule. It's going to take over everything you do, all of your time, your energy, and your focus. And so you're not going to be doing business development on your core services that actually drive cash flow. And what you start to have happen is all of your cash flow seizes up, right? So you start getting seized up cash flow, and it's a lot harder to get that back going again when you finally come back to it. I mean, we have literally watched people spend 6 months or more down a path of creating something that was not proven to sell. And then it turns out when they finally come back up for air, they realize they've been living off credit cards. They have maxed out, their business capital to basically go build, let's say, an online learning program. And they really lost their momentum with their business development. There's a 90-day rule in business development. And basically, it's sort of like the 80-20 rule that almost always holds true. But typically speaking, it's going to take about 90 days to see a bump happen off your business development effort. So let's say, for example, that you take 6 months to productize something. You're going to go build a big toolkit and templates. You're going to put all this together. You're going to do it all by yourself because you don't have cash flow coming in because you're not at the point in the business where you should be productizing yet. So you put everything on hold, all your business development, creating conversations with decision makers, creating proximity that's power and profit in your business. And you build a toolkit for 6 months. And then at that point in time, you start doing business development again for your coaching or consulting clients. That's going to take 3 months to start getting traction. Now you start getting traction, but let's say your average time to sale from the time someone expresses interest is 30 or 60 days. Now you're at month 11 in the year. You're at month 11. That means you basically were spending money for 11 months and not seeing the cash flow come in. So it can be very, very dangerous if you're not really thinking through your time allocation, where your cash flow is going to keep coming from, and who's going to make sure you don't end up in a massive feast or famine cycle with emphasis on famine. So be very careful about that. And then the last piece that can be a real trap for folks who do productization is not understanding true conversion numbers. So when you think about how much traffic you really need to be sending to a website on a monthly basis of ideal target clients, and then making sure that you're staying in front of them with retargeting. If you're not, if you're not understanding how many outreaches you're really going to need to decision makers in order to create enough interest in one of your productized offerings. If you're not understanding out of an average speaking engagement, how few people are actually going to move into paying clients, that becomes a real problem. And most folks are I'll go with the underestimating sort of way of saying this. Most folks are underestimating by factors of 100 to 1,000 how many leads they actually need. On any given day, your ideal target client, only 1 in 100 of your ideal target clients are really ready now for anything that you have to offer. And then when it goes to the sort of productization level, it's not just 1 in 100. It's the idea that it's probably going to be 1 within 5,000, 1 within 10,000 that see your online training program, that see your book, and actually want to invest in that. So whether it's by a factor of 100 or a factor of 1,000, or in some cases by a factor of 10,000, that people are underestimating just how big of a visibility platform they need, just how many decision makers they need to reach in order for those sort of productized offerings to reach a level that it makes sense in their business. Now, don't get me wrong, you can absolutely strike gold with an online training program and say, well, I just need 1. And that's fine. We're not, I'm a fan of these things. It's always just understanding the math. It's understanding the cost. It's understanding, do you have the ROI proof, case studies? Do you know exactly who you're selling this to and how to sell it? Do you have the ROI impact? Do you have enough reach? And do you have the budget to really hire those graphic designers, those e-commerce companies, the learning management system builders out there? Like, do you have the budget? Do you have the proof? And do you have the time and the bandwidth to be able to create these things without sacrificing the cash flow that you need to keep your business in a cash positive position? And so it's just something to understand. Productization is amazing when it's done with it in the right time, with the right budget and the right expectations of what it's going to take to actually monetize the product, whatever that is, whether that's the book, whether it's the toolkit, whether it's the online program, whether it's the research and the data. Do you have the budget and the team that's going to be able to actually go effectively market that product, whatever it is, once you have it available? So go in eyes wide open on this, go in eyes wide open of understanding, what it's really going to take and when you should start productizing your knowledge. I think the biggest trap is the online courses. If I had $1 for every time a newbie into their business who really hadn't delivered over a dozen of that training program to 12 different clients was trying to turn it into an online learning program, I could buy an island in the British Virgin Islands. So, make sure that you're doing the productization in the right order. Okay. All right, so let's switch a little bit here in terms of, so path one we talked about was productization. Path two is people. And a lot of times folks start with productization when really, in 99% of the cases, you actually want to start scaling your coaching, consulting, or services business through people first. So, and why? So, why do people avoid it? The first is really being afraid of committing to that overhead cost, right? If you're not sure that you can reliably fill your pipeline, you can reliably get yourself in front of decision makers, you can reliably control those conversations and lead them where they need to go to either get to a clear yes or a clear no with you. If you're not sure that you can consistently create that monthly financial figure to cover someone, then that can cause people to hold back. Another reason people hold back is because they're not sure how to do it, or they've tried to add team members to their company, but it didn't work out. And so they have some residual sort of fear, a hangover, if you will, from bringing on the wrong person or having that negative experience when they did bring someone on. So the good news is all of those things can actually be addressed and those fears really, I think, allayed if you know what you're doing and you think about bringing people onto your team in the right way and in the right order. So I want to talk about that here for just a second. Anytime you bring somebody onto your team, they're essentially going to fall into one of two groups. They're either going to be a team member that falls into the group that would be considered in corporate lingo a cost center, or that person is going to fall into the group of being a profit center for your business. So you have cost centers and you have profit centers in your business. Cost centers are basically overhead, right? So if someone is really a support person on your team, they're decidedly part of the cost center group in your company. And there's nothing wrong with that. Everyone in your company should be focused on helping the company be profitable and be visible and get the opportunity to work with amazing clients and deliver amazing results. So everyone's in it together, but it's still helpful for these purposes as you're learning to scale to think of it as cost center versus profit center. So who's in a cost center position? Well, your executive assistant or your virtual assistant is cost center. Your attorney, your CPA, your bookkeeper, your personal assistant. If you have someone doing graphic design work for you, even in the marketing capacity, that's a cost center. Frankly, marketing by and large is a cost center. Is considered a cost center. Sales is a profit center, but marketing costs are actually a cost center. That money is going out the door and it doesn't immediately make money for you. So you have lots of things in your business that are cost centers. Then you have your profit centers, which is primarily made up of two types of people: your business development and or sales people, whatever term you like better. We really at Bold House prefer business development because that's really, if you're growing your expert-based business the right way, they are developing opportunities. They are developing relationships. They are helping to develop, where the company is going and what offerings are that you're offering to your clients. It's much more strategic. It's much more holistic. It's a very different come from than selling, right? So your business development people or your salespeople. Also, though, when you're a consulting company, when you're a coaching company, when you're a training company or a services company, your profit center is also made up of anyone on your team who is billable to clients. Now, you might say, but Angelique, I don't bill by the hour. We don't do it that way. I understand. Again, this is for the purposes of kind of understanding how to scale your services. There are people on your team, whether you sell it as, a coach who's doing a 6-month coaching engagement and that's $16,000, you're still wanting to think of it as that is billable to the client. That team member that I have is someone who is client facing and they're working with the clients and we're getting paid in exchange for this individual doing work with the client. This isn't my bookkeeper processing their invoice. This isn't my graphic designer, changing my Facebook header. These are the people who are directly working with the clients. Those are your profit centers in your business, right? So these could be coaches, they could be facilitators, they could be project managers, assuming that they're literally helping manage that client project and they're working directly with the client on the implementation. These could be consultants, they could be the copywriters that are literally working with the client to develop the client materials that your firm is getting paid to deliver. Here's another way to think about it. If you owned a manufacturing company and your manufacturing company produced widgets off the assembly line, the widgets are your profit center. The division of your company that makes those widgets, that's a profit center for the company. So cars coming off the line, those are the profit centers. That's the part of the business that's making money. When you're in the business of expertise, when you're in the business of services and expertise, and essentially you're selling brain power, the widgets coming off your assembly line, forgive me, are your team, or what we call bench, which I'll explain that in a second. Those are your profit centers. The more they're working, the more people that you have working with your clients, the more people that you have available to deliver that brain power and expertise to your clients. That's more widgets, right? Like that's more coming off. Now, in no way do I think of my people as widgets. I want to be clear about that. It's just for illustrative purposes to kind of talk about it this way. So those are your profit centers. And here's the problem that a lot of experts and small business owners get into. They end up hiring their cost center team members before they find their profit center people. But I want you to think about this for a second. If you're the only profit center who is in your business, you're the only person who can work with clients, you're the only person who can go into an organization and deliver a half day or full day workshop to clients, you're the only one who can do team coaching. If you're the only one that can do that, every time you add someone to the cost center side of your business, whether that's your own graphic designer, somebody to manage your social media accounts, someone to be your executive assistant, to have a bookkeeper handle your invoicing and collections, to get an attorney that's worth their weight in gold, right? When you hire those people and you add them to your team, you're creating a bigger nut that you have to cover by yourself every month. Whether it's $1,500 a month that you sign on for a virtual assistant, or it's, a $10,000 a year legal attorney, or whatever the case may be, these are more mouths to feed, if you will, off of you being the only profit center in your business. And so that is really challenging. And it's why most small business owners and self-employed experts actually end up looping. They really end up in a really bad loop. Oh, I love that, Terry. Love that we're not selling, but always selling it focused on relationships. Yeah, I think that's really true, right? You're always developing relationships and you're really, I like to think of it, Terry. I know we've talked about this in Playmaker, but I like to think about it in terms of always developing opportunities for clients to be able to grow themselves, right? That's really what you're looking at there. So what I was saying was that when you hire for your cost center and you make that the priority, because people are always saying, oh, you've got to delegate. And trust me, we tell our clients that too, you've got to delegate. But if you're delegating to people that are your cost centers and now you're the only profit center, you're putting more and more stress on you. So typically what we see happen is people will hire, let's say, an assistant for maybe 10 hours a week. And then the assistant is taking some things off of them. But because the profit center side of the business has not expanded, what that business owner experiences is that they're now bringing, let's say $1,200 less home every single month. And they're thinking to themselves, well, yeah, they took 10 hours a week off of my shoulders, but sometimes I'm wondering what they should even be focused on. And now I'm going to bring home, $25,000, $30,000 less this year, but did I really make a good exchange there that I'm not, right? So the idea is you've got to build your profit center before you build your cost center. You need to always add a new profit center in your business before you add a new cost center. That way, that cost center is now being split across multiple profit centers in your business. You increase the profits coming in, then it offsets the additional costs. And typically it's done in a way where it's really at like a 2-to-1 kind of factor, right? And that's what you really want in your business. You want to add profit centers before you add a cost center. So again, those profit centers are the facilitators. They're the people you can send out to speak and get paid. They would be, paid members of your team in terms of speaking at top leaders meetings. They're going to be the coaches and the consultants and the project managers and the other people who roll up their sleeves and actually deliver the services to your clients. So that group is what we here at Bold House call your bench, when those folks are not full-time employees, because there's a couple of ways that you can add those profit centers. Yes, you could add those people as full-time employees. You could add those profit centers as part-time employees, or you could choose the third bucket, which is to add those profit centers to your business as independent contractors, which again, we call your bench. Why? Because they're essentially that's what it's called in the consulting space. Why is it called that in the consulting space? Because the idea is you have a bench of reserves. Think about a football game or a soccer game or a basketball game, and you have the people sitting on the bench. And when the person on the field gets really tired, right now, that's probably you're able to call in reinforcements and say, you know what, I'm not going to be able to do all of this myself. I have this great new client engagement at $60,000, but if I'm the only person who's delivering those services to the client, whether it's 60,000 or 600,000 or 6 million, if you're the one trying to do that, you're going to be really, really exhausted out on the field. And more importantly, you're not going to be keeping your pipeline full, and you are not maybe going to create a feast or famine cycle in your business. You are absolutely going to create a feast or famine cycle in your business. Now, what's the nice thing about going with a full-time or a part-time employee? Well, obviously, if someone is a full-time or a part-time employee, you obviously have a lot more control over their schedule, their availability. You're saying, hey, these are our office hours. This is exactly when we're going to have meetings, etc. But again, it's going to put a little pressure on you that you've now got to cover that salary. That's why, from our perspective, the fastest way and the first place to start creating scale in your business is actually by building a bench of independent contractors, consultants, coaches, content developers, facilitators, train the trainer experts, etc., who you can put into the game when you need them. And we call that building your bench. One of the smartest things that you can do, because there's really no upfront cost for you to build that bench, right? So having people who you have had the right conversation with, that you've talked to them, you've set the stage for how this is going to work, you've preset expectations, you've gotten these individuals on board it the right way, you've put the right agreements in place with them. When you have those folks, they are basically suited up and waiting on your bench for you to then go create opportunities out there that you can now leverage these folks. Everything shifts in your business. One of the biggest things that shifts in your business is that you will start seeing opportunities that you didn't even see before. Our insidious subconscious mind does all sorts of things to what we see, right? So, our brain is constantly filtering things out that don't agree with our paradigms, that don't agree with our core beliefs, but also filtering out things that protect us. One of the things that our subconscious brain often filters out is opportunity. Because if your subconscious actually interprets that opportunity as just more scary, tough work on your shoulders, like you're already working 40, 50, maybe 60 hours a week in your business, and suddenly there's an opportunity. It's like right there in front of you. It could be a $200,000 opportunity. But right now, to your subconscious, who knows that you are the sole profit center in your business, you are the sole expert in the business who can deliver this, half the time you won't even see it. Or your brain will interpret it to start really small. I'm just going to start with this very small opportunity with the client. They don't need all of that. I'll just go ahead and do this $4,000 workshop over here, versus really being able to scope out for them a $400,000 truly transformational engagement for the organization. I don't even want to think about it. I don't even want to see it. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to hear about it, because that's just $400,000 of work that I'm going to have to deliver, and I can't possibly do that all on my own. So one of the things that people ask us when we start talking about building their bench is, how much revenue should I be making in my business before I start building my bench? And that's a really easy one. You should build your bench from day 0 in your business. So I don't care if you literally are just giving your notice, or you just got laid off, or you're thinking about going out in another, month or two on your own. I don't care if you've been stuck at $25,000 a year in your coaching business for 3 years. You should build your bench yesterday. And if you didn't build it yesterday, then you should build it today. Because as soon as you do that, you're going to start thinking in different terms. And the thing is, it doesn't cost you anything to have bench members. You're not paying a bench member who's an independent contractor unless, right, you bring them into one of your engagements. Not only that, but when you bring them on in the right way and you are able to incorporate them into your capabilities briefing in the right way, from the moment that you start talking with existing clients about the next step, from the moment that you are talking to new prospects about the next step with you, whether they're going to work with you now or in a few months, you're able to frame those conversations as a we, as your company, as your firm, not just them getting you, but they're getting you plus all of your bench expertise. And so now it's not the risk of, well, what if you get sick with something that's going on for 6 weeks? You have an entire bench of experts that you're going to bring the depth and breadth of their expertise to that client engagement. Suddenly now you're able to coach more people, train more people, support bigger engagements, whether those are layered engagements or multi-phase engagements. That's something we can discuss on another live. But the point is, you'll see opportunities you didn't. Your prospects will see you in a different light. And it literally costs you nothing upfront to be able to make sure you have the right bench members on your team, right? So of all of these options, hiring, scaling through cost centers, scaling through productization, or scaling through building your profit center bench with 0 outgoing costs and 0 guarantees to what would be coming them, where do you start? Well, without question, you start by building your bench. I think one of the nice side effects about building a bench is the confidence that it breeds for a lot of folks. One of the things that I learned probably 10 years ago when I first started working, was 12 years ago now. Time goes by so fast. When I first started working with small business owners, consultants and coaches and trainers and diverse business owners, 12 years ago, one of the things that I picked up on, interestingly enough, in the beginning, was sometimes people are more afraid of getting the yes from a prospect than they are of getting the no. Because it can be scary, right? I mean, no one likes to be rejected, but if they say no, then there's no pressure on you to deliver an amazing program to that organization. But if they say yes, you better show up. You better do an amazing job, right? So one of the things that we found is when people build a bench, not only does it shift their mindset and their subconscious awareness of really what's possible and the opportunity that's out there, but it actually builds in a new layer of confidence. They're not alone in what they're going to do. They have a sounding board to talk about with that engagement, people who are going to be actually involved with delivering that amazing outcome for the clients. And so I think that's one of my favorite things about building a bench. So those are your 3 paths. For those of you who have not built your bench in your business, and you are wanting to do that, but you've gone down that path before and you made one of those really icky mistakes with building a bench, next Friday, we are hosting a workshop to help experts build out their bench. It's an all-day workshop. It's led by our executive vice president, Phil Dyer, who's absolutely amazing. And essentially, we were like, you know what? We've taught this in different pieces starting about a year ago. We said, we've just got to do this in one full day. We just need to share with folks every last step of the process, every last best practice of how to build your bench, from how to screen for who should even be on your bench and who shouldn't. Here's an example of that. Somebody who's already an empire builder doesn't usually make for a good bench member, right? Because they've already not like they're dreaming one day of building an empire. I'm talking about somebody who is that go-getter and their empire is already underway. That's probably an opportunity cost that of being on your bench that they're not going to explore. But there's a lot of other considerations as well. But that's an example of something to look out for. Is you don't want to necessarily have empire builders. You look at some of my faculty and who's on my bench, and there are certainly exceptions to that rule. I think Tara Powers is a great example of that. She's absolutely an empire builder with what she's built with Powers Resource Center, but she's able to be a faculty member of us, i.e. a bench member for us, and able to come in and laser focus with our community on certain things. So in that situation, that works really well. Other folks who've been on our bench for 10 years, they don't want to have to build an empire. They'd rather support me in building my empire. So think about that in terms of who's on your bench. But again, there's other things around that as well. Another huge bugaboo for folks who are looking to build their bench is, how much do you pay your bench members? We actually ended up building an entire calculator on this very issue, because folks were getting into the trap of setting one rate with their bench members across the board. So let's say you're a coach and you come across someone who normally charges $225 an hour for their coaching when they're coaching leaders inside of an organization. You would never pay that if that's what they're charging to their clients. You would never pay them that when they're serving as a bench to you, number one. Number two, not every client engagement is actually going to be the same. There's a number of key variables inside of every single client engagement that you land that would redetermine what the rate is that you pay to the bench member. So a big hint right here is that you don't set one rate with a bench member up front. That is madness. That is madness. So there's actually a calculation looking at multiple different variables that you can conduct before you price out bench members per engagement. Our CFO actually built that as an Excel calculator. So our clients who complete the bench workshop can just plug in certain key numbers, and then boom, that's how much you have to pay your bench in that particular engagement. Not having the right agreements in place, so painful if you don't protect yourself in certain ways. How do you manage your bench so that it's simplified, it's effective, and you don't end up out of the loop on what's going on with your clients because you've got bench members involved? How do you properly introduce your bench members to your prospects and to your clients? How do you do that? How do you frame it? How do you lay it out? How do you control those relationships? How do you make sure that you're setting those boundaries? If something does run off the rails, how do you address it? If this issue pops up, if that issue pops up, what do you say to the bench member? What do you say to the client? How do you, in fact, bring everything back to get it back on those rails and the train headed in the right direction? These are the kinds of questions that I think really stop people from building this profit center part of their business, which is such a shame, because when they don't build this, they end up building a 6-month online training course that they sell, one to one company. So don't do that to yourself. Make sure that you're building your scaling in the right order, that you're always putting your profit centers before your cost centers, that you're starting with things that you can do almost immediately and is not a huge risk and upfront cost to you. That's really going to allow you to stay in the role of rainmaker, of relationship builder, of cultivator with the opportunities that are in the market, and really allow you to expand your reach. I think one of the other things that's been really great, I started building my bench all the way back in 2006. So I've been doing this for a really long time. And I feel like I've made every mistake in the book. It's one of the reasons we created the Build Your Bench workshop, because one of my for those of you who understand human design, one of my human designs is that I'll go make all the mistakes and, go out to razor's edge, cut my fingers and be like, wow, it's really sharp out there. That really sucks. And then be able to come back and with some degree of humor tell folks it's really sharp out there at razor's edge. So don't make these mistakes. So we've been doing this for a long time. So whatever 2006 is, what is that? Oh my gosh, like 16 years. Long time. So we decided to lay all of this out for folks so that they could actually get going with this in their business and do it the right way from the get-go. If there's one thing about business development and one thing about your bench and one thing about actual sales conversations that has the same lesson through all of them, is that it's a lot harder to get the toothpaste back in the tube once it's out. Business development, marketing, sales, building your bench, building your team, all of these things are a lot easier to deal with if you just don't let the toothpaste out of the tube to begin with. So we'll show you how to do that. So if you're looking to scale your coaching business, if you're looking to scale your consulting business or your services business, and you know that you're right now sitting there as the only profit center in your business, and half of your time isn't even spent making it rain in your business because of everything else you have on your shoulders, you may want to think about joining us next Friday for the Build Your Bench workshop. We offer it once a year live. You can get it on demand, but it's so great when you're there for the day with Phil and you can ask all of your questions and get direct input on who you should have on your bench and how to handle the nuances that are specific to your business. It's just, there's nothing better than having that whole day in that small, intimate environment with that virtual workshop, because we do keep it pretty small, so that you can come in and go through it and really get all of your questions answered about how to build this for your business once and for all. So really amazing opportunity in there for amazing opportunity for those of you who want to build your bench. Carolyn, amazing. Yeah, you absolutely need to get out. It's good to see you. Yeah, you've got to build your bench right away. And I think one of the things right now that is really advantageous to folks who build their bench now is when you look at the challenges and the problems that organizations are having. I mean, they are bleeding people right now. They cannot, they're cutting down on the services that they're offering. Look at the airlines. They're canceling flights left, right, and center. Restaurants are cutting back on their menus. They're cutting back on their days open, the hours they're open, the days that they're open. Companies are cutting back on services that they're offering. Hotels, for example, don't have restaurants open and coffee shops open that they normally would, that would normally be cha-ching, 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 generating revenue all day. Companies right now have such a talent shortage. It's unlike anything that we have ever seen before. We're going to talk a lot about that at Groove in October. For those of you who are joining us at the conference, I can put that link up for you guys as well. For those of you who are joining us at Bold House Groove, we don't go in at Bold House Groove into the nitty gritty of bench building. I do want to be clear about that. Bold House Groove is, how do you get in front of decision makers? How do you navigate those sales conversations? How do you create your thought leadership platform? And this year, amazing, everybody will be creating their motivational maps so that they're going to have an opportunity to understand how they operate, what truly motivates them, as well as what creates resistance inside of them, so that we're going to identify what strategies work best based on what your innate motivators are. So very different. So you have Bold House Groove, which is really about the business development side of your business, the CEO mindset side of your business, the revenue side of your business. The Bold House Build Your Bench workshop is really a deep dive. It is an intensive on building your bench with all the templates and all the tools that you need to do that. But I think to Carolyn's point, right now having a bench is so important because there are so many niche topics and there are so many complexities and interdependencies of what organizations are dealing with right now when it comes to their team. You've got the intergenerational challenges, your organizations that are looking to really truly take diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging to a whole new level, really beyond checking the box, to make it truly ingrained in the DNAs of their organizations. When you look at the sales side of things, the marketing side of things, how companies are really struggling to have the people that they need on that side and all the training that has to be done over there. When you look at the leadership pipelines that are, dry as the desert in those leadership pipelines, the more niche experts you can have on your bench right now, the better you're really going to be able to meet your clients where they are. If I were, in the leadership development or culture transformation space right now, I would have employee wellness experts on my bench. I would have mindfulness and mindset experts on my bench, and burnout experts. But I would also have experts in the hard skills. One of the big issues right now is you might be able to recruit somebody who has a great attitude. They're willing to learn. They show up with a great energy every day. They give discretionary effort willingly into their role, but they're missing some of the brass tacks skill sets that they need to be able to truly operate every single day and get their job done. They need some of those more core skills, those tangible skills. So if I were in that space right now, I would say to folks, when you look at the myriad of challenges that organizations are facing, and you look at the interdependencies and the complexities of those challenges, it's always been important to build your bench. But if you want to be relevant to your clients right now, you really need to think about the holistically. Like, I want you to really to sit down. And this is one of those great mind map exercises. We talk about this in the bench workshop too, but really sit down and think about the web of challenges that your clients are facing right now. Really look at it holistically. Don't look at it only through the lens of your narrow expertise, because we all have our narrow expertise. I don't mean that in a slight way. I just mean, like, you've got your expertise, but there's an entire constellation of experts that have related expertise to what you do that fits into the constellation of the shitstorm that corporations and mid-market companies and small enterprises and nonprofits and even local and state governments are all facing right now. So I would say, it used to be a nice to have building your bench, but where we are today, when you look at what's going on in the marketplace, it is truly, truly a new level of madness, right? It is a dumpster fire meets a three-ring circus. And so the more relevancy that you can bring to your prospects and to your organizations, the better that's going to be, you guys. So oh, good, Michelle. I'm so excited that you are joining us for that. And I'm an executive stylist and coach, and I'm trying to figure out how to build a bench for styling. Actually, is it pronounced, put it phonetically for me. Is it Afaya? Afaya? It's beautiful. I love that. I want to make sure I pronounce that correctly. So, if you're an executive stylist and a coach, and I assume then if you're an executive stylist, you're probably also working on sort of almost like personal branding, right? To help them show up in a certain way. So number one, you could absolutely have some junior stylists under you so that you can serve more clients. But you could also think about having people on your bench that are body language experts. How does someone show up? Great. It's awesome. Maybe you worked on their mindset. Maybe you worked on physically what they're wearing, their hair, their makeup, their wardrobe choices. But then do they walk up on stage like this? Are they kind of, like this? And their body language is, oh, okay, Afia, nice. Thank you so much. I love it. That's a great way. That's a great way to, I always say for Brewers, I don't think Brewers is that complicated, but people butcher it. And so I'm always like Milwaukee Brewers without the B. For the baseball fans out there anyway. So when you think about, styling, I think about junior stylists under you. My stylist, he always, whenever we go shopping, he actually has a junior stylist with him. So that's one of his bench members. I think about the folks who work on body language and how you show up. But I would also think about even experts who work with people in terms of projection. And how are they communicating? You could absolutely have trainers, like physical trainers or nutritionalists on your bench, because I certainly know I can go work on all of this, but if I'm not working on what goes inside my body, am I not drinking enough water? Am I not, drinking, eating enough vegetables and doing cleanses, then no amount of styling or even mindset is going to overcome what's going on in my body. So when you think about so what I would do, Afia, is I would start with a mind map, and in the center I would think of a word that resonates with you, like vibrance or thriving or unstoppable, right? Like, think about a word that really captures how you want your clients to feel, because I know when you're styling them, you're carrying one of those words with you, whether it's the unstoppable or badass or vibrant, right? And so put that, in the center of your mind map, and then draw out all the things that would have to be true for that person, that female executive maybe, or that female CEO that you're working with. And you've got the styling piece covered. Maybe you've got the inner mindset piece covered, but what else has to be true in their life in order for them to achieve unstoppableness or boldness or vibrance? And whatever those other things are, there's a bench member that would be attached to each of those bubbles around the vibrance or the unstoppable. And the same thing goes, you guys, for Michelle and others. Anne, it's good to see you. In terms of, like, if you're in the leadership space or the culture space, let's say you work with a bunch of executives, how do you ultimately want them to feel? What is it that you want them or their organization? It doesn't have to be the individual, it could be the organization. What do you want to have that organization feel or experience? And those bubbles can also become. Now, Afia, that's awesome. So you don't have to outsource. It's not really outsourcing. Remember, the bench is going to be on your team. And I think that's I'm so glad you mentioned that, because that is a big difference. There's a difference between outsourcing and making a referral, for example, versus having someone on your bench that, yeah, they might also run their own business. Phil Dyer, for example, who's our executive vice president, he's the one leading the bench workshop. He also owns a financial planning business. He has owned that business for 15 plus years. And so he has that business. And then he's also our executive vice president. So make sure, Afia, you're thinking about your bench. Number one, that you're thinking about it from the perspective of these people are going to be represented as being a part of your team. Everything goes through your brand. That's number one. The other thing that you're bringing up that I'm glad you did, because I actually did not mention this, is that there are always kind of two types of bench members on your team. There are the mini-me's, and then there are the specialists. So I want to say that again. Whenever you have bench members, it's going to be one of two things. They're either a mini-me or they're a specialist. Now, a mini-me would be, and we stole that term from Austin Powers. Dr. Evil had a mini-me, right? So like your mini-me is someone who basically can do the things that you can do, but you can only be in one place at one time. Like, you can only work with so many clients. So Phil, my executive vice president, is a mini me. So, Phil could do a strategy day with a client. I'll do a strategy day with a client, and our brains are like one and the same. And so they're going to get the same results, whether it's me or it's Phil. They're going to absolutely get their messaging nailed down and their business growth strategy nailed down. And Amanda, who is also just like Phil on our Playmaker Mastermind. She's a mini me. She's doing the strategy. She's looking holistically at our clients on their business development plan. So they're mini me's. Tara Powers is not a mini me. Tara is a specialist. So instead of giving me more bandwidth to do the type of client work that I do, and me having Phil and Amanda on there, she's a specialist. Alicia Corey on our team, she's a specialist. Alicia Corey's focus, she's a Colby expert. She's a predictive index expert. And actually, Afia, she's also a personal branding expert and does styling and things like that. So she's a specialist. Meanwhile, Tara is a specialist in corporate training programs. So if one of our clients is like, looking at how do I create a multi-six-figure corporate training program, that's where we bring Tara in as a specialist. Whereas Amanda and Phil are just like me. They're going to do the same kind of strategic planning with our clients, marketing, messaging, pricing, program, like the whole, like looking at the whole business. So you've got your mini me's and then you've got your specialists. And so in your case, Afia, you may very want a couple of mini me's, people that are almost like apprentices to you, right? And so they're going to work under you and allow you to do everything you do. But you might also find that there are 2 or 3 areas of specialty that it's worth having those bench members as well. And that's for all of you guys. You want to think of your benches the same way. You want to have some folks that are mini U's, and then you might want to have some areas of specialty that you put on your bench as well. And a really healthy bench is going to actually have a mix of both. So I'm really glad that you brought those questions up. I love that. All right, you guys. Well, I promised I was going to go for about an hour. And as usual, I'm kind of known for going a little long. That goes for Groove, that goes for workshops. We tend to go a little bit over. That's just kind of how we roll around here. Because we tend to be very specific. If you do want to join us at the bench workshop, that's next Friday. It's going to be amazing. It's a small, intimate group, so we'd love to see you there. Groove is a couple hundred people, so that's a little bit bigger. We'd love to see you at Groove in October on the beach in Fort Lauderdale. We put on a really great conference, very robust with strategies. So we hope to see you there. I love doing LinkedIn Lives. It's actually one of the things I really enjoy doing. So you guys will probably see me back here later this week. So stay tuned for that. Thank you guys so much for joining. And thank you also for your amazing questions. We love those. And I will, I don't know who the Facebook user is who just asked that question. Bench members, in our opinion, should always be independent contractors. The only place that you really have to watch that in the United States, I mean, you always need to follow the rules and the laws of the IRS and your state. If you live in California, make sure you talk to your CPA or your tax accountant to make sure you set everything up properly. California is really difficult sometimes if you just don't dot every I and cross every T in terms of independent contractors. Hey, Rubina, it's good to see you. So yeah, Rubina. So if you are, so you really want your bench to be independent contractors, because then you're not paying them unless you're utilizing them. Right. And you want to utilize your bench about 80% of the available hours they have for you, but you're only paying them when your client is paying you. So they're pure profit center. If you turn them into an employee, then now they could possibly fall into the category of cost center if they're sitting there twiddling their thumbs and you don't have enough business coming in. Now, we have absolutely, Rubina, seen folks who they started utilizing a bench member so much, and that bench member and them were working together so well that they ultimately moved that person into an actual employee. And there's nothing wrong with doing that, because typically when that happens, it's a really healthy decision from a cash flow perspective, from a business management perspective. So that absolutely happens. But in the beginning, having them as independent contractors is without question the way to go. You just need to make sure you follow the laws in your state and with the IRS here in the United States. If you're outside the United States, then obviously you have to follow the laws and rules of your home country. But here in the US, Rubina, you just want to make sure that you're following all of those independent contractor rules. So I hope that's helpful, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me. Like I said, I'm going to try to pop in. I really like popping in here to LinkedIn and talk about some of these things that are coming up for our clients at Bold House, and keeping you guys in the loop. So thank you guys so much. And I will see you guys at Groove or at the Bench Workshop next Friday. See you then.